Find the perfect ride for you today with the New Year New Ride sales event at Guam Auto Spot. Get behind the wheel of the 2024 Outlander Sport starting at just $22,995 or only $156 per paycheck. Visit GuamAutospot.com or call 671-478-AUTO.
Buy fuel, get Wendy's. Drive to your nearest 76 Circle K and get free Wendy's. Yes, free. Fuel up with $30 and score your choice of a 6-piece crispy chicken nuggets or a juicy junior cheeseburger deluxe. Fresh, hot, and packed with flavor. But hurry, quantities are limited and this delicious deal won't last long. So hit the road to 76 Circle K, fuel up, and get Wendy's free before it's gone.
You or someone you know looking for a job? Well, Sentinel Security is hiring and they're offering starting pay between $10 to $15 an hour, and they'll train you too. Email them today that you're interested at sentinelsolutionsguam@gmail.com. Sentinel Security, Guam's most reliable security solution for your home and your business. Kickstart your day with one of Wendy's Guam's breakfast faves, either the morning melt panini or the breakfast burrito, or the sausage, egg, and cheese English muffin, or anything that's on their menu. Your mornings just got delicious. Head to Wendy's for breakfast from 6 to 10:30 in the morning on weekdays and from 6 to 11 a.m. on weekends.
Kandit News is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
Good evening, my dear friends. It is 9:35 p.m. on Thursday, August 7, 2025. I am tired. It is very late for me, but you know what? I got to work. I got to pay the bills. I do not have any poor people who I can take PUA proceeds from. I don't have political weight to press benefactors for this, that, or the other thing. And so here I am at 9:35 p.m. publishing a story. Just finished writing the story after putting all the pieces together. And here's the video editorial on this. Now, do you still believe that Josh Tenorio didn't know? Remember when the indictments came out against Charissa Tenorio? Good evening, Sister Jen. I love you. When the indictments came out against Trini, I'm not sure what planet they're from, but I mean, that was the line, right? Maybe you didn't know. Because Josh Tenorio said, I didn't know. Do you still believe he didn't know? Because, and I don't believe this is going to be the end of the investigative reports that come out of all of the different newsrooms. because it ain't just us. Thank goodness for Joan Ogun Charfris, investigative journalist with KUAM, who has been on a story about Tiguac Cemetery, about how the lieutenant governor's sister and her boyfriend have this business called Comfort Cuts, and Comfort Cuts for the past several months or years, the investigation is still ongoing, has had a contract or a purchase order, is what it's called, to cut the grass and to get rid of the clippings and foliage that is littered around Tiguac Cemetery on a regular basis. Hi, Sister Alicia. I love you. And Joan Ogun Charfris has been on this story because so many people have seen and have complained about the condition, the deplorable, disrespectful condition of Tiguac Cemetery. Tiguac Cemetery is more formally known as the Vicente Limtiaco Cemetery. It's the only, if I'm not mistaken, the only public cemetery in the island. It's run by the Department of Parks and Recreation. Hi, Mark Anthony. I cannot drink coffee at a time. I have insomnia, and so there's no way I can drink coffee past 11:30 a.m. So I'm just wondering how this goes, right? If you have this, if you're one of the very few people who still have this in your head that Josh Tenorio is telling the truth when he says, I didn't know. So how does this work? Josh Tenorio is the lieutenant governor of Guam. One of his employees is the director of Parks and Recreation, Angel Sablan. His other employees, the deputy director of Parks and Recreation, Warren Pelletier. One of Charissa Tenorio's paris is in charge of park police. Do you really figure that in the past several years of complaints about Tiguac Cemetery, not once did Angel Sablan go to Josh Tenorio and say, Lieutenant Governor, we're having a problem. Your sister has this contract with us, and she's not performing it. And the grass is this high, and people can't get to their graves, or they can't see the markers of their families' graves. Kids are tripping and falling into areas. The cemetery, of course, is a disgrace and unfit for the memory of our deceased. Do you really think Josh Tenorio didn't know? And if Josh Tenorio was told about Tiguac Cemetery, which he probably was, very likely was, why wouldn't we think he knew about the indictments? He knew about the alleged scheme for which his sister, his boyfriend, his brother-in-law, more than half of his family was indicted by a federal grand jury. And then there's everything else that hasn't been yet reported. All the investigations that we, KUAM, all of the other news agencies are doing and are going to do about all of Charissa Tenorio's other contracts throughout the government of Guam. Because it isn't just Department of Parks and Recreation. It isn't just Tiguac Cemetery. There's other places. All throughout the Leongro Tenorio administration, Miss Tenorio, through her companies, and Mr. Rosalind, through their companies together, or their businesses together, have made out with contracts here and there throughout the government of Guam. And I was thinking about this right before I got on the show, do you realize that what Richard Nixon was nearly impeached and removed from office over, what he resigned from office over, is peanuts compared to what Miss Tenorio, Mr. Taposnia, Mr. Rosalind, and 4 others are accused of doing? Do you realize that, and by the way, it was a third-rate burglary. It had nothing to do with stealing millions of dollars. That what Richard Nixon, former president of the United States, was accused of doing, basically covering up, lying, not telling the truth, is basically the same thing that we suspect Josh Tenorio is doing. Covering up, lying, not telling the truth. And the first lie that we believe he's telling is that he didn't know. Do you realize that what President Bill Clinton was impeached for doing, lying to the grand jury, is nowhere near as bad as what the federal government accuses those 7 co-defendants of doing? So here on one side of the coin, you have our standards as a country, as citizens of a country, and we hold our presidents to these standards, and we are going to impeach them from office, remove them, force them out, cause them to resign through public pressure for simply being dishonest. And it makes me wonder, why are we still here talking about Josh Tenorio? Why hasn't he resigned already? Because it's not going to stop here. I'll guarantee you that. I'll guarantee you this, and I'll guarantee everyone at Adaloop and all the trolls at Adaloop and everyone who is trying to bring us down, bring down the witnesses in the Tenorio corruption case, bring down the confidential informants and defendants in the Tenorio corruption case, everyone who is trying to make this whole thing go away, all the enemies supposedly of the lieutenant governor and his bid to become the governor of Guam, God forbid. Despite all of that, the truth is going to come out, and it's going to keep coming out. And how can these people in the administration, with a straight face, continue to come out into the public, face us without any shame whatsoever because it is so obvious what's going on here and what has happened over the past several years? And many of you, ourselves included, have said this over the past several years, that corruption has been happening in this government under this administration. Maybe we were wrong about exactly who it was. Maybe we should have looked at the evidence a little closer, that it wasn't really Lou Leon Guerrero. But it was there. It was just the person right under her. We've been seeing this. It's been right in front of our eyes, just like the deplorable conditions at Tiguac Cemetery has been right in front of our eyes. And in that statement that Joe Nuggan, Charfris, and the rest of the media, except for us, got from Comfort Cuts, Frankie Rosalind or whoever in that statement says that there are these political insinuations that KUAM is making. They try to connect it to E.J. Calvo being a relative of the owner of KUAM and also being the lieutenant governor candidate for Tony Atta, who's running for governor. So they talk about political insinuation. No, it's not political insinuations. You didn't cut the grass, and everybody can see it. And so did you get paid for it? And so there were all these pictures coming to us today from people who were in that area, who live in that area, matter of fact. And they were showing us, they're like, hey, why are there Department of Corrections vehicles there? Why are there Department of Corrections inmates at Tiguac Cemetery with bush cutters today? The question being, why is someone else doing a job for which Comfort Cuts has a purchase order and supposedly is getting paid? So I got on the phone right away. I asked First I asked Crystal Palcos and Augustine, what's going on? She said she would try to get me some answers. She eventually did get Angel Sablan to call me, and I'll give you that. I'll talk to you about that in just a second. But first, my conversation with DOC Director Fred Bordallo. Son of a gun, I forgot my cough drops. DOC Director Fred Bordallo. You guys like my haircut, by the way? I got it today at Royalty Cuts, not at Comfort Cuts. And Fred Bordallo, I asked Fred Bordallo, are your inmates over at Tiguac Cemetery now cutting the yard? And he says, yes, it's his work credit minimum out inmates. And he tells me that they've actually been there a few times. And I ask him, are they getting paid by DPR or by Comfort Cuts? Any portion, at least, of the proceeds that are supposed to be paid to Comfort Cuts? He says, no, that it's volunteer work. I think it's like voluntold work. And so I asked him, I said, are you aware that Were you aware prior to yesterday that their DPR has an agreement where they pay a contractor, a vendor, Comfort Cuts, to take care of the grass and the foliage over at the cemetery? And he said it was not his understanding and that no one at DPR told him that. So no one at DPR told you when they were asking you to have your inmates come and cut the grass that they do have a contract with someone. No one at DPR said that news. No one at DPR told me that. So that's very interesting. So, I'm waiting, and this afternoon, finally I get a call from Angel Sablan, and I really thought that, because he's a cabinet member, he's at will. He is a line agency director. You can't get more at will than that except for governor's office staffer. And the guy just came right out with it. The first thing he told me was that the person who had arranged for the inmates, for DOC inmates to help out over at Tiguac Cemetery whenever things got bad over there, the person who arranged for that to happen within DPR was Joey Terlahi, who is the park police chief. Joey Terlahi has a long-standing relationship with Charissa and Josh Tenorio. Joey Terlahi was one of the head marshals at the Superior Court, or the Unified Judiciary, when Josh Tenorio was the director of the Judiciary. When Charissa Tenorio was working at the Judiciary, Charissa Tenorio calls him Par. And so there's this sort of a personal relationship happening there. I don't know whether that personal relationship has any bearing on this. I just want to put those facts out there as part of this. And so Angel Sablan, he's exasperated in this phone call. Clearly, it was a public scandal that didn't need to happen. Like, really, all that needed to happen was there needed to be a vendor who would cut the grass regularly and then take the clippings away from the cemetery and dispose of it properly. That's what the vendor had to do, whoever the vendor is. And this would not be a public scandal or a controversy that Angel Sablan would have to deal with. And so you can tell, and by the way, also, Charissa Tenorio was also chief of staff for Joey Terlahi's father when his late father was a senator. So there's an extensive relationship that the Tenorios have with the Terlahis. Just putting that out there, okay? And so Angel Sablan explains to me and says, look, these guys, he keeps, and when he says comfort cuts, he refers only to Charissa Tenorio. We call her because we get these complaints from the public about the grass. And then when it gets to a certain height, the grass gets to a certain height and it's just unmanageable, untenable anymore. That's when she comes and she only sends 4 workers. And how are those 4 workers over a 1 or 2 day period that they are sent for going to finish 30 acres? And so they're only able to finish a portion at a time. And then the grass keeps growing, then another portion, and then whatever, right? So it's been a continuing problem, according to Angel Sablan, directly contradicting what the Comfort Cut statement said by Frankie Roslin when he said that Comfort Cuts is performing the contract. Angel Sablan said that's not true. They're not performing the contract. In fact, because they're not performing the contract, we're not going to pay them a cent, is what Angel Sablan said. And I asked him, what does that mean? And he said, since January at least, they haven't sent an invoice, which is the primary reason that Comfort Cuts hasn't been paid. But even if they sent an invoice, he said, he wouldn't have paid them because they haven't performed the contract. And so, you have this director's agency head risking his job, I would imagine, because this is the lieutenant governor's sister that we're talking about. And this is an administration that likes to retaliate against people. Let's not sugarcoat any of these terms. Let's not be like people in the political or the corporate elite who like to, make things a little nice. We can be Christian here, but call a spade a spade. All right? We can just be completely honest and forthcoming and forthright, using terms that are simple about what is going on here. This administration, at least all the way up to Josh Tenorio, has been corruptly manipulating our people and fleecing this government, and allegedly to the financial benefit of the lieutenant governor's family. And more evidence is coming out. And people have been talking about this. I just wish that we in the media did a much better job in exposing this prior to the last election, the last gubernatorial election, where everybody was saying, oh, it's Lou, it's Lou, it's Lou. Nobody was looking at Josh Tenorio. Nobody was looking at all of the contracts Charissa Tenorio had throughout the government of Guam. Nobody was reporting on it except for one or two things. I think there was a carnival thing at one point that came up. But here we are, and it's being exposed. And now we're learning together all of these things that allegedly have been happening. And shame on all of us for spending the past 6 years in the dark. What are we going to do about it now? I'll tell you this. In terms of just this Tiguac Cemetery thing, what we're going to do about this now is ask more questions. Because how much was Comfort Cuts paid prior to January? And did they perform the work? One of the things Fred Bordalio is going to send to me, he said, is a list of the dates of all the times that his inmates went over to Tiguac Cemetery. And if those dates are anywhere within a week's vicinity of dates Comfort Cuts used or asserted that they performed services at Tiguac Cemetery, we're going to have to sound alarms on that. And then we need to find out how much has been spent and over how many years. When did this all start? And what other contracts are there at Department of Parks and Recreation? And what contracts are there at the Guam Department of Education, where we heard from one of the witnesses in the Tenorio corruption case, alleging that Charissa Tenorio had an inside person in the procurement area of Guam Department of Education who was bid rigging. That was one of the allegations that one of the witnesses made. So evidently there's some sort of contract, probably or likely, that has something to do with CMFT or Comfort Cuts or whatever. That there are a bunch of different businesses under different aliases under the control and command of Charissa Tenorio. And then there is, we reportedly, contracts through the Department of Chamorro Affairs, even Chamorro Village. We want to know whether Charissa Tenorio or anyone in the Tenorio family is dipping their fingers into the $159 million BEAD broadband monies that came in from the federal government. What about the airport? What about the seaport? What about Gita? We are just scratching the surface. And it amazes me, not just that Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio is hanging on this long to the bones of a skeletal political career now, but that none of this has humbled any of those people that, rather than seeing the writing on the wall, being regretful and remorseful for what has been done by this administration to the people of Guam and future generations, they are with absolute arrogance and self-righteousness. And it appears to me a hatred for the people of Guam, doing whatever it takes for them to hold on to power, even if that means destroying innocent lives, interfering with the federal investigation, intimidating witnesses in that federal investigation, lying, attacking, manipulating. And there, ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends, is all you need to know about not just this administration, but more importantly, the drive to put Josh Tenorio into the governor's seat. And it's why we can never allow that to happen. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. Good night. God bless you, and I love you all.
We got that dynamite. We got that dynamite.
Find the perfect ride for you today with the New Year New Ride sales event at Guam Auto Spot. Get behind the wheel of the 2024 Outlander Sport, starting at just $22,995 or only $156 per paycheck. Visit GuamAutospot.com or call 671-478-AUTO.
Buy fuel, get Wendy's. Drive to your nearest 76 Circle K and get free Wendy's. Yes, free. Fuel up with $30 and score your choice of a 6-piece crispy chicken nuggets or a juicy junior cheeseburger deluxe. Fresh, hot, and packed with flavor. But hurry, quantities are limited and this delicious deal won't last long. So hit the road to 76 Circle K, fuel up, and get Wendy's free before it's gone.